This session is all about creativity and ROI in the agency world and in brand experience world. And obviously, it's kind of more and more important, and it's coming up more and more in topics about the importance of creativity to brands and to agencies when they're doing work. You look at like the festivalization of business events. If you're looking at pop-ups, it's important, and it is being brought up more in conversations around the impact it has on agencies' business. And there's this creative expectation that, the bigger events that are getting, obviously they are kind of leveling up every single time. It's always kind of like everyone trying to one up themselves. And I'm really excited to kind of delve into the more specifics of how you guys have been able to kind of really balance that approach and balance that with client expectations. So yeah, we can just first introduce ourselves. Hi, my name is Gina. I'm the marketing manager for International Complex. So thank you all for being here. I'll first go to Jon. Just want to introduce yourself and maybe the best event you've worked on in 2025.
Brilliant. Cool. Hi, I'm Jon. I am the director of GoHo. We're a small boutique, kind of award-winning agency, female founded. And what is the best event I have worked on in 2025? Putting together a multi-day event in Munich for one of our AI partners, clients, over 3 days. Multi-breakouts, big screens, really fun, really great evening stuff. Off-sites, all sorts of interesting stuff. So that was a really good thing in Munich we did here.
Oh, amazing. And a great city as well.
Brilliant. Yeah, very good food, actually.
Oh,
yeah.
Very nice. And yourself?
Hello, my name is Simon Baird. I'm the creative director at Chief of 21st. We're a medium-sized agency. I've got some of my colleagues out there who are trying to whoop it up. Feel free to everyone whoop at the same time. We're a medium-sized agency. We're based in London. We've got offices in New York as well as Cannes. We do a lot of work in Cannes for the Cannes Lions Festival of Creativity. Best event in 2025. You really put me on the spot with that one. I've been working on a project and I've only just delivered it at the end of last year, which was a large conference for professional services. And we really sort of flipped the script as to how a plenary experience would be run and what that agenda was. And we made it very, very theatrical. We thought about the way that every speaker would have a completely different colorway for the space. That every time that someone walked into the room, things moved and things changed. Just basically having an understanding that when people walk into a plenary experience or into a conference to listen to another speaker and then another speaker, you have to deliver them something new and something fresh and really create the foundation that speaker to deliver.
That's amazing. It's amazing. Into herself, James?
Yeah, thanks. Hi, I'm James. I'm head of client services at Brand Formula. So a lot of the events, I feel it's a very tough act to follow. We're working on the coolest events. Most of our clients are sort of corporate insurers and professional services. But I think we did some, probably a fringe event around a big insurance conference last year, which was much more boutique in its outlook and I guess more of a sort of an executive engagement perspective. So really dialing up the creative nature of that. Interesting to sort of step away from and I guess provide an environment for the client to be a little bit different in terms of what they were doing. So it's not quite festivals or Munich, but interesting in its own way.
No, absolutely. And actually kind of building on that, do you find that even if it's not as kind of creative as some of the other industries, do you find that like ROI is still kind of being pushed for that?
Yeah, I think so. I think creativity is a really interesting one because often people sort of think that creativity and ROI sit on sort of opposite ends of the spectrum, but actually they're both really linked. And I think that's something that's really important for us. And what we're seeing is clients want to be thinking about what's that journey that we're building out and how are we telling the story that we need to get across and that's all underpinned by what their objectives are and what that return needs to be. So sometimes that is in terms of your really strict commercial return, how much business have we written, how much have we closed. But in other instances, it's what are those indicators that how many good quality conversations are we having? What are some of those other metrics that we're starting to look at?
Yeah, I definitely feel that even at Convex, that is something that we look at when it comes to that ROI that we give to exhibitors. And obviously from a kind of larger scale point of view from an agency, like Simon, what would you say in terms of why has ROI intensified kind of over the past few years?
Well, there's constraints to them. I mean, the market is, there's industry challenges in terms of like the cost of things are going up and budgets are coming down in some instances. I think ROI is really, really important from the outset of a project to understand what they really need from a project, whether it be large scale or small scale or whatever it is. What is there actually real could be the limit that you're looking for? I think the other thing with ROI where is so importantly pushed upon, sometimes unnecessarily, is that it's easier to sell in that this needs to be 38% in more improvement, or the actual method that actually works a lot easier is a lot easier to sell up the chain than it would be to sort of sell in a big creative idea. Like, in preparation for this sort of conversation that we're having today, like I thought about some of the really creative advertising campaigns and events and that sort of stuff. And I think about the person that had to try and sell in the Cadbury's Gorilla ad back up the chain to their stakeholders. And if they were to say, yeah, we're going to get this drummer, we're going to put him in the most expensive gorilla outfit you've ever imagined, and then for the first half of the ad, we're going to focus in on just the nostril and then slowly pan out, they'd be like, that's not going to work. What's the ROI? What's the measurability? What's all that sort of stuff? But I think it taps into something which is more important, and you mentioned too, which is about the relationship that you're creating with the brands. And that's a really important aspect of what we do. And, what we look for when we're delivering a project is like, how are we sort of creating those moments in which people are really sort of connected, and that it's lasted even longer than just the four walls that they've experienced out of bed.
Yeah. And I think, obviously, I kind of looking at it from the opposite end of like, I find that sometimes brands are looking at it as like they're using creativity as a way to get out of paying for more. Like they're like, can we do this more creatively to kind of almost using it as a framing technique is like, rather than kind of going all out on the bigger.
There's two different types of creativity. There's the one where like, let's be creative with this, which is like cooking the books a little bit or trying to make it work or refit it, that sort of stuff. But I think that when we think about, if you look at ROI and creativity is the multiplier for ROI. The more that you feed into or invest into creativity can really improve the ROI or improve what you're wanting from that experience. The more that you lean into it, it's a bit more beneficial. I think that there's a danger that the businesses have budgets which are being a little bit more constrained, and they can't really afford to be boring because the landscape there's so much activity and chaos going on, is that you really do need to stand out or create moments that really, really matter. And therefore, creativity is so important to actually deliver that.
And
I was just going to say, I think that's a really interesting point. I think sort of marketing as a general has almost been dominated the last few years by this idea of performance marketing. And you can spend £500 on LinkedIn and you know exactly how many people have seen your ad, how many people have clicked your ad. And there's almost that expectation that because you've got all of that data, that you get the same out of events. But I think what's really interesting is it's almost like, well, the data tells us who our audience is, but the creativity piece is why they pay attention, and it's how we bring that story to life.
And John, do you think that differs between different clients? Obviously, with your AI client, like, was that different with potentially other clients you've had?
Yeah, I think it's all really going back to the fundamental, like creativity and ROI often in conflict because ROI isn't essentially always linked to a tangible outcome in creativity, but creativity basically creates a context and the conditions in which ROI can be driven. So when we talk about individual clients, I always go back, and my team always go back to the same question, which is, what is creativity trying to solve? What is the problem? And the Cadbury's thing is a really good story because essentially it taps into the idea of the emotional response. That's from Phil. The record is Phil Collins. Everybody knows that record, but it doesn't start there. It starts and it comes and it builds basically. So when you've got Cadbury's and they want to do this a creative agency wants to do this, they're thinking from a stakeholder point of view. You're thinking, not sure about this gorilla. But when you actually add the emotional layer and the conditioning, because the problem is, what problem Cadbury's trying to solve is we want to sell more chocolate bars, we want people to know this brand, we want people to know dairy milk. That's the problem, and the solution is the emotional attachment to the product. And therefore, going back to our clients, by knowing each client's problem they're trying to solve, and using the Munich example is a good one, is their first European conference. They're trying to drive in business, they're trying to drive in clients to come and see what this tool is, this product's tool is. But how are we going to do that in a way that makes people want to come, stay, observe, listen, and then go away and go, you know what, I need that for my company. And that, by creating an experience around that, and a memorable experience, that is the tangible ROI, even though it's not metrically proven in a right then and there.
Yeah.
It's percolating through,
Yeah.
and that is always a conflict between our stakeholder ROI and what we're trying to do creatively.
Yeah, I think even for us at Convex, like I obviously know it's not the same scale as what you guys do, but trying to create those moments where it's like the social scale but the social proof of it all is also quite important. Like Simon, have you found that like there's other ways that you can challenge like unrealistic expectations with like headed clients and like how that measurement works, balancing that?
I think it becomes we get unrealistic expectations of ROI for all the time. In fact, there's a brief that came across my desk literally a week ago, in which the budget for the BT space activation. Wow, did everyone hear that?
Lot.
It's because I spoke about a brief. I mean, the budget was roughly about 100 grand in terms of building a meeting space, but then the ROI expectations of what they were looking to deliver was over $1 billion in pipeline revenue, which was like a pretty massive scale difference between what they're looking to achieve. And it took a little bit of time for us to sort of pull apart and ask the questions a little bit of digging deeper into the brief and working out, okay, where did this come from? And are you really expecting us to sort of deliver that for you? Or we're just creating an environment, going back to your point, creating an environment for that richness to those conversations to take place. And then what we realized is that, the true motivation from that came because the person that put the brief together is someone who was just lifting information from another brief, which was a much larger, objective, and just put it into our brief, which then put an unrealistic expectation of what we needed to deliver.
Yeah.
And then the other thing too is that the other factors that we can't really control, like if we're going to create a meeting space or create an event space in which the sales team of the brand that they're working is me going to deliver and sort of really get to, make some sales or make some new contacts or whatever that is, then we have to be in control of what we can control, or we can control the environment. But if you want us to make $1 billion worth of sales, you better be getting Jerry Maguire into that space.
Yeah.
As your sales team, like, we can only help you to the point at which we're elevating the entire experience, but we need to make sure that we're doing the best for your team within that space.
Yeah, and I think that that's such a important kind of conversation where it comes to like different KPIs are overlooked, but like also how you can even improve it together, like working with the client.
Yeah, and I think the other thing to sort of pull apart with a brief is understanding what's the brief underneath the brief, like what's the real objectives. Like sometimes we get some briefs that come through and the objectives are off the charts and that sort of stuff. But realistically, what we're looking to do, if you dig a little bit deeper, is that it's about making sure that the CEO gets some face time with 5 different people, rather than it being a big plenary experience and what's things like. Or it could be that, this person's new into the role, therefore, they're looking to solidify their position and understand that, okay, that's your motivation, there's your objectives, and then we're trying to match and sort of deliver all those at the same time. So there's different sort of levers that we need to sort of unpick. Levers that you unpick, no, that doesn't work. There's different elements that you need to unpick when you're sort of receiving a brief to try and understand what exactly it is that they're after.
Because I can imagine you can't necessarily talk to the CEO every time you get a brief across the table.
Well, that's the other really big challenge as well, especially when you're a creative industry like us, is that, selling that idea up, you got to make sure that you're arming the team that you're presenting back to, so that when they do present back up to the CEO or any of those stakeholders, they feel comfortable in the idea. I mean, we're always going to challenge that and give them something a little bit outside of the box, or, we call it the mild and the wild, or sort of push them a little bit further. But if they're not comfortable enough to be able to present that up the chain, then it's never going to last.
Yeah. And James, like how early should the ROI conversation kind of begin in your work with clients?
Yeah, I think the ROI conversation really starts at the beginning. I think as the guys have said it, it's really about understanding what do we want to get out of this event, what are the sort of those measures. So I think we challenge clients a lot in terms of, okay, we're going to this conference, we're going to do this event, and it's like, well, why are we going? What's the objective that we're going to? Because from that's a sort of, I guess, play with the creativity and bring that story to life. So I think having that understanding of this is what we need to get out of this. Well, I think also being able to challenge and being realistic, as Simon says, closing £1 billion or $1 billion worth of revenue from an event, that's part of the journey. There's much more to that. So what role is this event playing in building the brand, in sort of meaningful conversations and sort of enabling that success for the goal of the team, I think is really important.
Yeah. And John, would you agree?
Yeah, definitely. I think the earlier you have that conversation, the better, because at the end of the journey, and we're then talking about, well, what's the ROI, what's the KPIs that we delivered, it's very hard to kind of analyze that after the event. Oh, that didn't work, well, that didn't work, but we did this creative thing, but it didn't really work. It's like, well, actually at the start, this is exactly what you said. It's like the objectives, and I come back to my same original conversation we started this with. It's like, what are we trying to solve here? And then what are our metrics at the start by using our creativity that we're going to be able to put and measure and then report up to the top, rather than at the very end where you're backtracking because the fluffy great thing that you decided to do, or the campaign that you did, or the marketing activation that you decided to do didn't quite work, but we had no markers to begin with to check that. So to me, the start is the major bit.
Asking that question, what does success look like?
Yeah, exactly what yours. Okay.
I think one of the things that we sort of think about is if the creativity needs to be solving a friction point for clients. If it's not solving that friction point, if we're just being creative for the sake of being creative, it's really just expensive decoration. And that's not what any of us are in the business of doing.
Yeah, and I think so. We at the minute are Convex are doing a Love Your Visitor thing where like basically they get like an area in Convex, they get their travel paid for, they get their lunch paid for, and then 6 months, like a month down the line, they had to tell us who they had conversations with and if anything went through, and then 6 months down, because it's hard when you're doing events to like really get to the bottom to some of the ROI, like the impact that it has. Like I've heard of like clients that have exhibited like 2 or 3 years ago that have just kind of like
Same to return.
closed on business from being at Convex, which is like, is there also that with other kind of more corporate clients when it comes to things like memory and smell and like the affinity that they have, like that brand affinity that is that quite hard to measure?
Well, I mean, we've got a client who actually has their own signature scent that they use in each of their spaces,
Oh, that's genius.
which is nice. Again, it sort of touches on that sensory experience that, like you walk into a space, you want to feel at ease within that zone. And we do other events in which we'll pray to these spaces which travel all around the world, and we try to keep a very similar aesthetic. And if you turn up to the one in Dubai, then when you go to Cannes, the Wi-Fi automatically connects because you're part of the same house group, so you're always sort of connected. Like, it's just little simple things that just make people at ease and just take away another sort of barrier. I think that footfall's an interesting one. I think, in what you talk about, that 6 months on the month later, that sort of timing, I think I use the word for like about another word, which is fame. Like, what's the fame from that experience that you've created? Like, what's remembered in that 6 months time if you're trying to create a bit of experience? Because football can be a little bit misleading, in which, yes, you've got a number of eyeballs, but how many people actually remembered what they actually saw, or had an in-depth conversation, or took away something that emotionally resonated with them? And so, like, if you're trying to create something, and I mean, sometimes in the chaos of events, and actually got in spaces like this and some of the festivals that would take place here, is pivoting to do something completely opposite, which is like creating a space of calm rather than trying to compete against the noise and the energy of everyone else. I'd rather than try and go bigger and better, I'd just create a sanctuary where people could have a one-to-one conversation that's really in-depth, that actually resonates.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel that's something that we see. A lot of our clients, like I said, they're all sort of corporate insurers, so there's a lot of sort of sameness and not necessarily that appetite to really push the boat out into some areas. So it is about sort of creating that meaningful sort of interaction where you can get some face time with the CEO, or you can get some face time with that key person, almost curating the environment around that. Because that's, like I say, it's sometimes it's that connection that you make, it's that conversation that you have that is the catalyst or the starting point or the closing point that you can sort of start to see success from.
Yeah. Sense. Oh,
So
your
Can't hear me?
oh, there you go.
There, you got me there. Perfect.
yeah.
Getting some feedback. Because we've come up with that challenge quite a number of times, and one of the projects that we work on in Cannes for the Cannes Lions Festival is Sport Beach, and it's the whole premise behind Sport Beach is that it's all designed around play, and the creative concept was around the idea of play. So rather than having a stage set up, we actually had a basketball court. Rather, we had that could transform into a pickleball court. We had rock wall climbing activities, and basically all the normal to standard sort of networking things that you would think that you would have. We flipped the script on that and actually made them more sport based. And what that generators is that people were coming into the space and just having a ping pong match with a CEO and having this shared interaction engagement. So be a marketeer with a CEO or some sort of celebrity or some sort of brand, put everyone on the same sort of level playing field. And what works so great is that not only could people interact and have a competition with a basketball game or whatever it is, but then people that didn't feel so adventurous or a little bit more risk averse would just be spectators, and they still felt part of the experience. And just brought everything. So it wasn't about creating another, Soho House meeting sort of space, relaxed and chilled out sort of environment. It was about creating something slightly different about the way that people interact with each other.
And John, do you got any examples where creativity kind of drove business outcomes for your clients?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, another thing that we do, and we always try to strive for at GoHo, is kind of that, kind of elaborating on Simon's point, which is just that differential. We don't really want an inquiry that says, well, we just want another PTR in a meeting room. We just want to deliver this. We want to deliver like that unique value proposition for our clients. And so separating that experience and doing something different, leveling the playing field is another really great phrase, because it's kind of saying, look, if you're here for getting involved or you want to sit on the fringe of the event, you can basically still enjoy and create a memorable experience. So for us, yeah, we like to do things that are slightly different, that are slightly unique. And we actually do reject some inquiries because we go, look, this is just, don't want to do anything just standard again and again. We don't have to push the budget any higher, but can we do something more memorable?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
Yeah.
And yourself, James?
I think, yeah, it's a really interesting, it's being able to show the return. I think we've worked with clients sort of over the years to, just really simple things like putting meeting spaces in event stands so that actually they can have a more confidential discussion, and clients have been able to write business in the room, close the deal. Like, I think that's been, so less sort of using creativity to solve a problem rather than sort of off the wall creativity. I think the other one that I know the team have delivered is, often with some clients that we work with, there's a lot of different parts of the business who all work with like the parts that everyone else wants to work with. So being able to curate it was almost like a corporate speed dating. So everyone has the chance to meet the other sort of stakeholders, and then curating a really nice sort of executive experience where there was a dinner, there was an event and an activation that sort of happened on site. So I think thinking about the structure and how you can be creative in terms of that structure is sometimes as important as sort of how does the event come to life.
Yeah, and I can imagine, obviously, with getting so many different clients and kind of all the different ideas that you guys have, that working in a team, and obviously that is really important. Obviously, Sam, you said you've got something you're doing here today. How have you found kind of the difference between creativity, like when you're working with a team? Do you find it like you have to kind of work with a team in order to build that creativity in like an event? When you initially get like the brief, like when you work with a team, obviously like managing the expectations between the client and who you work with, like do you guys just work on them on your own? Because obviously I don't work in an agency.
No, we're very much a collaborative agency. In fact, we've recently changed the way that the creative section of the office actually is arranged. It's one big sort of round table, and then we encourage everyone to sort of come in and sit down, and there's artwork and inspiration and thoughts and ideas all over the walls and lots of stuff. And as much we really relish actually having people looking at our teammates as like relish people coming in with ideas and so throwing them around. And I think it's important with a client relationship as well is to bring them on that journey as well. Like, we have what we call a spark hook, which is where we just dump all our ideas on an extra sort of stage as a part of our creative process. And that could be anything. It can go into a number of different sort of directions. And from there, we sort of hone it down into, understanding what's going to be best for them, or what's, the right solution. But being part of that process of seeing sketches and rough drawings and textures and tones and all that sort of ideation actually really helps with sort of the presentation and the delivery of what that big creative idea is at the end, because it's not just seeing a pretty picture at the end of a PowerPoint presentation. They've been on that journey with you. And it's a lot easier to sort of get really big creative ideas over the line when I understand all the thing and all the research that you put into it at the beginning to come to that final solution.
Yeah.
And I think the other thing with an agency too is that we're in the room and we're absorbing all these different things from all different agencies and in that industry, outside of our industry, we are a little bit of a filter for that sort of stuff. And sometimes when we speak to our clients, we're very much locked into what's happening in their sector, or even sometimes just within their company. So having that opportunity to sit down with them and say, look, this is the whole gamut of the whole spectrum of that we're looking at, and this is why you should be doing this particular thing, because on a global sort of scale or on a bigger sort of scale, this is going to be really impactful for you. It's really valuable.
And John, like, obviously you mentioned about working in like Geneva and the regionality of working with different clients throughout the world. Obviously the UK is known for having such a great agency like sector, and have you found that like creativity changes, like that expectation from clients of like ROI and creativity changes throughout different regions?
Look, our sector kind of UK, USA, we're starting to push into the Middle East, but on the whole, I don't feel like it actually changes a huge amount, because the outcomes are still, everybody's looking for the same outcome. Brand awareness increase, differentiation from competitor set, expansion of commerciality, all those things, they still apply. It's just that you do have to be a little bit nuanced between the sectors, because obviously culturally, we deal a lot with America, and you'll put on an event for an American firm, the expectations are much bigger, not just because the country's bigger, because that's what they're used to. They're used to seeing a much more, and when, Munich is a good example, because, you bring an American company into Europe for their first their conference convention, and they're used to having a culture where it's a very much, yes, we can do this. And our job is to make sure that, yes, still continues, but we're having to deal with, a German audience, which is a more, they have checkers and balances and markers, and, things aren't as fluid. So you're kind of having to relate that to the client and managing their expectations all the way. I mean, we're quite fortunate in some ways. We're small, a very small boutique agency. We're quite nimble. So there's like the people that you start the project with, you deliver the project as well. So, end to end, the same people that are delivering the pitching and selling are the same people that are delivering the event. There's a very small team. So
Yeah.
that way you get continuity, across all sectors and all regions. So yeah, in that way it's good.
Yeah. And do you guys find that the same, like when you're working with clients, the international clients are kind of, the outcomes are exactly the same, like, or similar? And
Right.
obviously the nuances are how you work with them rather than the outcomes.
Yeah, I think definitely. I think there's a lot of consistency, and everyone's seeking that same outcome. But I think how that activates in different markets. I think everything is bigger in the US. All of the conferences that we do over there potentially are sort of 3 times as big as some of the conferences here. So that's 3 times the spend, 3 times the volume of people. Like the number of the team that we've got to send, and that the client's sending to sort of post business. It's on a scale that's pretty mad, but they're still expecting the same things out of the conference like we would here in Europe.
I was just going to say, just because it's a problem in my mind at the moment, which is like trying to get a US client, their screen, it's normal. And I'm like, sorry, they're like, the ceiling height's just not big enough here. Yeah, ceiling height's not big enough. I'm like, no, I need 20 plus foot, like, with the stage. And like, so like things like that, like exactly what you said, James, is that the expectation of the delivery is big, and then trying to find that sort of sourcing those kind of spaces can also be challenging. But
I think there's a point that you sort of said with the person that pitches, the person that delivered, and I think there's a nice culture with UK-based agencies going into the US. Is because the person that you want to pitch usually is part of the delivery team, and that person, and especially I was the same with our agencies, is that willing to roll up their sleeves and get involved and just get the job done. There's a real can-do sort of attitude. I find that a lot of I find it challenging sometimes working in the US, where you have we did a plenary experience, a conference in a ballroom, and we had one union that would allow us to move a box off the stage, and we had a second union that allowed us to move it off the dance floor, and we had a third union that allowed us to move it off the dance floor into the elevator, into the lift. And then even then I still wasn't even able to touch the box. And then if that was in the UK, like, we just like, let's just get into it. Roll sleeves up and just make it happen. So like, the outcome is the same. There's the cultural nuances that you just have to sort of play into play.
And so I can imagine then, like, working with suppliers and venues becomes so much more important then, like, and when you're obviously delivering on that sort of scale, like I didn't realize that obviously that happened. Obviously you can tell I work on exhibitions, and that's really cool. I've got a kind of final question before we take more questions from you guys. If you've got any, please do feel free to put your hand up and we will have a mic to come around. Have you got kind of any intangible value that you can give to stakeholders, like post-event, like something that is your go-to when it is presenting, obviously that important to creativity linking to ROI, to their ROI?
Who wants to take that one first?
Sorry, I feel like I probably phrased that wrong.
I think part of it comes back to what's the objective at the start. I think, John, you made the point that if we're trying to backfit, that what does success look like? It's really difficult to say, well, we closed X number of business or we had X number of leads. I think understanding that is this a brand piece? Are we trying to track sentiment? Are we sort of not just tracking the number of badges that we're scanning, but how many conversations have we been able to progress? As someone I know in the media world, and he says that the reinsurance circuit's great because he can go and have all the conversations with everyone in the same room. So that's an event that they get quite a lot out of, being able to sponsor. So it's being able to, whilst you can't necessarily provide a tangible value for everything that you do, it's being able to articulate, well, here's what we set out to achieve, and here is the value that we've been able to deliver back.
Yeah. So exactly that. And I was thinking while you were talking, I was like, to stakeholders, I think senior stakeholders especially, it's kind of like creativity is not the ROI, but creativity is the driver to move the needle to give you the ROI you want. So that's the emotional needle move, which then translates into your tangible ROIs. So as James said, it starts with the conversation. Here's a problem. Here's how creativity can help can help change that dial, change people's perception of you, your brand, your events. And here's what we're looking to map with actual metrics in our ROI. That's the journey for me, anyway.
I think the other thing that we've been trying and capture is that, when you hold an event or an experience, is trying to recapture that energy. So when you are sharing those metrics or those ROI at the end of the event, you're also pairing it with like a photo album or some sort of memento or something, or a really great edit of what the experience felt like. Because 2 months after the event and going through like the debrief plus stuff, you're looking at lines on a sheet or sometimes in Excel, but you're forgetting how wonderful it felt. You forget what that emotional sort of connection was. You forget about what that person said, what that person felt, and what the energy was. And sometimes it's just like rebottling that up into a little bit of a package. And it's, at the end of an event, such a nice way to wrap something up. And so here's a photo album, here's a book, and here's 3 things that we sort of kept from the event.
Oh, I love that.
Well, we actually have a thing in our office because we do so many projects that just suddenly become this huge effort and work that we do that don't live on afterwards. So what we do is we actually take 3 or 4 different items, we put them in a test tube and we put them up on the shelf. So we've got all these test tubes of just little elements from the experience that we have, almost like the VFG, like he's got all his dreams lost and stuff, and just like remembering like all those different experiences.
Oh, that's really, really cool.
It just gives you like a bit of inspiration for when you think about the next event, and then you see that sort of trigger.
And it gives you that like nostalgic pullback. I put this subject out to the ages because I used to work in luxury hotels. We used to provide signature music for the hotels, but we used to provide playlists that the guests could take away, or people that could take away from the restaurant, and listen to their own Spotify. It's about reconnecting that memory back again, and as Simon said, that is about.
Brilliant.
Humans are about memory and emotion, and if you can pull that back in, and then you can deliver that.
So I need to get working on like a complex playlist.
Complex playlist. Yeah, mix it up because you're already halfway there with a DJ headset.
Yeah.
People can walk in, you can scan your badge. You could walk in and walk out. Someone's attended, but what is a lasting impact the convexist had on them? That's the bit it's very difficult to measure, but can be measured.
And I think
That's right.
Oh, sorry, just to say that's very important. A lot of people think that the event's done, great, job done. We can on to the next, but it is about what's that experience that wraps around the event as well, and how are we bringing that to life. I think some of the ideas that the guys have mentioned are brilliant, but it's. The event doesn't sit in isolation. It needs to be as part of a bigger sort of marketing plan, and making sure that it's all tied back with that, and the right touch points, before, during, and after are supporting and like you say, sort of bringing back that event experience and really hitting what we need to.
Well, that's fascinating. I feel like I need to come do work experience with you guys.
Absolutely.
Cool. Have we got fabulous? Does anybody have any questions? I'm gonna look at the time. Yeah, so you have a question.
Thank you. My question is kind of taking it a bit of a step back from it being necessarily about creativity and justifying that ROI, and more so about when you obviously get your potential clients or prospective clients sending you across a brief and you feel that the demands are unattainable. Have you been in a situation where you've then had to change your pricing structure in order to accommodate, or have you had to like turn down work because I'm a small business, I've had to turn down work because clients' demands were just unrealistic and I wouldn't be able to achieve them? So protecting my personal brand and the business is more important than winning that contract. So I'm just wondering how you go about kind of balancing it so that you guys also make money, it's profitable for you as an agency.
I might jump in briefly. I think it's a really interesting point. I think sort of honest conversations with clients is really important. I mean, because we do a lot in events, in exhibitions, we get a lot of clients come to us. They're like, we want a brilliant stand and we've got £3,000. I was like, cool, that doesn't actually buy anything in that world. So sometimes it is really important to have that conversation and that is, you know what, we're not right for this at the moment. Here are some solutions that you might explore. But I think definitely found ourselves in that position where sometimes it's just not the right fit or just not the right objectives. But I think being brave enough to have that conversation and say, yeah, this is what is achievable. And if you're interested, we can do it. And if not, then maybe here's how it's to deliver.
Yeah, that management of expectations is a really good one. But also be brave enough to what I said to you turn it down. It's not going to be right for your brand. Because, you're only as good as, the reputation that you sort of build is as much as what is this? Getting that paycheck, you the ball, So, my bravery, so I think the client would too, if you called it out as BS. I said I wasn't going to swear as an issues. You just call it out and just sort of say, I feel as though this is unrealistic, and they might actually change the brief depending on that. I think that if you did that, then you do become more of a collaborator with them to help write the brief that's going to work best for them, as a better looking, stronger relationship down the line.
I think it also just sort of showing like examples of other things. I think there's another project that my team are working on, and they want the moon, but they've got a very limited budget. So it's just like, okay, well, if you're talking about drones, it's like it's six figures, and we haven't been talking anything near that. So if we can't have those conversations, then yeah, you definitely come undone very quickly.
Yeah, just finding out. I know your position because it's scary, because you're just like, I can't turn down the business. I really want to do this, but actually my gut is telling me I just can't deliver this, and it's a small business problem all over the place. But it's like, I always try and flip it and go, people are coming to us because it's like, we are the people in the know. We are the ones that are and use the word consultative in your head. It's like, you are the consultative voice here. You're saying, look, this is great. This is brilliant, but actually, we can do this part. This part you might want to look at here. This is what I could do for and just protecting yourself, protecting yourself a bit. And you're not turning it down. You're still offering a solution. But you're still backing yourself and your business because you know better than anybody else what you can do, what you could deliver, Sometimes you take a gamble, right? And you bring in some freelancers and you kind of do your best and it kind of works out. But if you just know, I think, yeah.
Although these are perfect answers, and I think that education piece around supporting to find the business that comes in is really important. Has anyone got another question? Oh, have you got any final remarks, Guy? Oh, sorry.
Here we go. And out from
Go.
Yes, hi. I'm actually very curious as to how much creative work you'd be prepared to give away before the client's actually committed.
Oh, it was the beginning of that one. Sorry.
A tricky one.
Yeah, I mean, I think the client has got to see what your vision is. I mean, so I think you kind of have to gamble a bit and go for it. Yeah, I mean, the final thing is never what the vision or the mood board or whatever you want to mock it up, whatever you want to call it. But like, I worked in music for a long time, live music, and often I'd have to pitch to the artist or the management or the rest of the label what I believe the live sound to be when it was finished. So I'd like go in my room and I'd mock it up and I'd make it. I'm giving away my ideas straight away, but like they have to be able to step into that and see it and feel it a little bit. So it's about presenting it in a way. Again, it's about creating the emotional response always, wow, this is it. It resonates to me. I understand. Going back to your brief and making sure that it really aligns, throwing some wild cards in, you know. So yeah, I think you do, personally, me speaking, you do have to, because somebody else is going to come along with another creative pick as well. So you've got to go all in, I think, sometimes. But still have some things in your pocket, you know, have some ideas that you keep back, you know. That's my personal.
I completely agree. You got to show some leg, you know, have to show a little bit of idea of where you think it's going. Sometimes it's best not to show what you think the actual final idea is going to be, but you show the process that you would come to that idea. Like, so show some of the working, some of the exploration, rather than just like, here's a finished product and this is what it is and all sort of stuff. I mean, for right or wrong, we think that ideas are a renewable resource, cheerful 21st. So we come up with ideas all the time, and we're happy to sort of share them the mess of us. We have the luxury of having a 40 years of experience that we could then sort of say, this is you can trust us to sort of take you on a journey, that these ideas that we're presenting to you are actually going to work out. But I wouldn't be afraid to show the ideas and put it out there, like, you know, within reason, like, you know, coming up with full designs and schematics and plans and all that sort of stuff. But it starts becoming into hard costs. But I mean, you can sell an idea with a really good sketch, and quite often that's what we do. A really good sketch, and talk about how, you know, but you got to make people feel, and that gets it across the line.
Gifts?
Just one step. Sit.
Slow? So again?
What's here?
Sorry.
Old school. So I think the answer is it depends on the client. I think as the guys have said, you've definitely got to show enough to get someone excited. I think sometimes we might work with clients where we know we're the only one, pitching for it in essence. So we're happy to go a little bit further and really bring them in on that journey. But I think it's, especially in the events world, it's very much visual. It's how does this make me feel? What's the story that we're telling? What's the impact that we want to last people with? So I think it is, unfortunately, we are pitching our ideas. We're pitching our sort of creativity against everyone else. So it's one of those ones I don't think we're going to be able to get away from.
It shouldn't be that way. But, you know, I think he was putting your client at ease and making them feel comfortable to go with you. So, yeah, helps.
Well, we have time for one final question if anybody has one. If not, I'll let you all go. Fabulous. Oh, yeah.
Hello. Do you sort of have any clients that you're sort of like 100% hello? Hello, fine. Yeah, loads.
Yeah, it's working. Just
Do you have any clients where you're 100% aligned on questions of ROI and creativity, and sort of how did you approach that relationship?
Many clients are kind of like you made magic because you are so aligned on like ROI. Great. Big.
I think, sorry, I think it's like some clients, like it's always an open conversation. So I think the more that you can build that relationship, and you can sort of start to know, okay, it's really important that this client has has these metrics to hit. So I think it is just sort of how you build that relationship, and really putting, I guess, ROI, or what we like to talk about, impacts at the center of that, and everything else sort of builds out from there. So I think yes, but we've had to work quite hard to get to that point with them over a long time.
Yeah. Well, that makes sense.
I misread the question. I thought you said, have you ever lied about ROI and had to do it towards the end? So I thought, oh, just it, that's all.
Have you lied about ROI?
No.
Thanks. Perfect. Cool. Have you got any final thoughts before we close the panel?
Thank
Yeah.
you very much.
No.
thank you for having it.
It's been an absolute joy. This is
Hope
really,
you
really
enjoyed it.
fun. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you
Hope
so
you
much.
enjoyed it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks everyone for
Perfect.
coming, actually.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you guys. Have a great week. Day on bikes.